Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and welcome back to another video. This is everything you need to know about the Feudal Fables update. Let's start off with the skins. We have a brand new event pass featuring a Moji and a Furia skin. We have a Red Riding Moji and her recolor, AndrewChicken. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And there's also the Shrine Guardian Furia skin and her recolor, the Shrine Demon. There is one more skin coming this update in the form of Cuddle King Bomb King, which is a direct purchase option, and if you want to see any of these skins in action, I already have videos of them up on the channel, so go check them out. And of course, if you want to buy the event pass or this new Bomb King skin, or just anything in general, then make sure you're doing it at my Nexus, nexus.gg/AndrewChicken. You can buy crystals, the season pass, DLC, and more, and support me directly in the process. It's officially affiliated with Evil Mojo, and is a great way to support the channel. Next, let's talk about the new player experience, because quite a lot of improvements have been made in the Feudal Fables update. Starting with a new player quest line. As you can see here, there is a Welcome to Paladins quest line where you can complete each of these quests in sequence and you'll get a bunch of rewards as a new player. They're super easy to complete, and some of the later quests will give you free champion tokens, which makes it much easier to unlock champions as you're starting out. On top of that, many champions have been made cheaper. I'll put the full list on the screen so you can pause and read that if you want, but in short, a lot of older champions have been made cheaper, which is excellent. And finally, the ranked requirements have increase, so you now have to be level 20 rather than level 15 to enter ranked, which might not seem like a lot, but in terms of the XP you have to gain, it's actually a 75% increase, so this will give new players a lot more time to actually learn the game and acquire some of those champions that they need to actually play ranked properly. There are also two new limited time modes coming to the game, one of which is very exciting, and that is Truly Talented, which is a limited time mode that brings back many of the old talents that got removed from the game for older characters back when the game had 4 talents instead of 3. And it also features a few unreleased talents that may or may not work and may or may not be balanced. It'll be very chaotic, and it'll also be a time to revisit some fan favorites, like Dragonfire's Lance, Wakono's Curse, and stuff like that. Firing Line Con, you get the deal. The second limited time mode is Caught Lacking, which is basically like if Paladins was Overwatch. So instead of having ramping up Cauterize throughout the match, Cauterize is just set at a fixed 35% value, and it's permanently applied to characters, which is a way to make every healer heal for less, but not have to worry about late game Cauterize like Paladins normally has. Now let's talk about the most exciting feature of this update, and that is the Support Moji Rework. Now I'll have a full video breaking down the Support Moji Rework, giving some suggested early builds and other stuff like that, but I just want to go over the basics first. So one thing to note when you log into Paladins in this update is that all of your Moji builds will be deleted, and that's because she has basically 16 new cards, almost. So, yeah, no more builds for Moji. They're all gone. You're going to have to make some new builds, but honestly, that makes sense. She also has 3 new talents, and she has a whole new kit, and that's because she has been reworked into a support. And so I want to show how exactly she works, because there are actually quite a few different and interesting things when it comes to this rework. So her primary fire has been reworked, even if it may not seem like too much of a difference at first. It does 450 damage, and it's just spit. But it also has an AoE effect, by default now, so that's pretty cool. And you use it to detonate your magic marks. However, magic marks are applied with your right click to your allies. So, if we go ahead and mark up this Fernando, we can heal him with our spray, and then detonate the magic mark for a big burst of healing. And it'll also apply a heal over time, as you can see with those 50 ticks. So, you basically heal up your teammates for a big burst of healing, just like this with Support Moji. And you also, with your spray, which is now renamed to Sparkle, it has a resource meter, so once you run out of that resource, you will not be able to heal anymore. And it regenerates reasonably quickly, so you can get back to healing your teammates. It's just to balance out the fact that these heals are pretty insane. On top of that, there's one more important thing to consider with the marks, and that is that they have an AoE effect of their own. As you can see, I am healing myself as Moji here, and that's because I'm in range of the magic mark. However, if I back up over here, once the magic mark turns white, I can no longer heal myself with the AoE, but once I get back into this range, we're back to healing myself, so it's a pretty forgiving AoE, and it's about the same length as her spray itself, so yeah, very, very powerful heals. Next up, we have the Magic Shield, which is the rework to Magic Barrier, and this ability will channel some shields onto Moji and any nearby ally. And as you can see, on the health bar, it gets pretty substantial for Moji. She gives herself more shields than she gives her teammates, and that's to also act as her own self-sustainability. So she is able to give herself 1000 shield health, while every other ally gets 500 shield health, and it slowly regenerates over the duration of the channeled magic shield, and will slowly decay after 4 seconds. Her last 2 abilities remain mostly untouched, although there have been some modifications. So Scamper is infinite now. You just keep going. It's like Victor's Hustle, and it also has a shortened cooldown of just 4 seconds. And then her ultimate is also mostly the same. You turn someone into a cookie, and then you walk into them to eat them. The only difference now is it provides a burst heal equivalent to half of your health whenever you eat them. So finally, before we move on, let's talk about talents. The one I was just using is called Spit Shine, and this allows Spit to heal allies for 350 and increase their movement speed by 20%. So, as you can see, I don't actually need a magic mark on Fernando. And another thing is, her Spit pierces, and this is not exclusive to Spit Shine either. This is actually part of her base kit. So it'll pierce through allies, but it won't pierce through enemies. Instead, it'll just have that AoE effect on enemies. So this is a nice way to supplement your healing. Obviously, the Spit doesn't run out of ammo, and if you detonate a magic mark onto Fernando here, you will get a very big burst heal. That is an 850 burst heal, and then the additional heal over time, which is very substantial. And again, keep in mind, it has the AoE effect on the mark, although because the 350 comes from the Spit itself, that will not heal you or anyone else hit by the AoE. You would have to pierce and hit multiple people in a line for the Spit itself to heal for that additional 350 on multiple people. Her sort of hybrid talent is Realm Runner, which harkens back to Toot. This allows you to summon a Dust Cloud whenever you scamper. That will heal any teammate inside of it for 600 healing per second. And it'll just linger on the Fernando like that. And the cloud itself lasts for 4 seconds, but guess what? The cooldown of Scamper is also 4 seconds. So, if you're good at Moji, and maybe buy a bit of Chronos to make it slightly easier, you can maintain 100% uptime on this Dust Cloud if you so choose. However, for those of you who are worried that damage Moji is gone, well, guess what? Jubilation is the talent for you. This is her damage talent, and it brings back much of what's featured in, you know, old flank Moji. So you can now apply magic marks to enemies and do damage just like you could previously. The damage is slightly weaker than flank Moji for sure, but the important thing is that this playstyle still exists, just with some new quirks. Obviously, Scamper is much better now. You can still cancel it and try and bunny hop if you want as well, although I'm terrible at it. And yeah, you have the magic shield, which you can kind of channel before you enter the fight, and then go attack Ying, slobber all over her with 3400 HP. And yeah, you do also have to keep in mind that you will drain your resource meter still for this playstyle, so you want to be a little bit careful with that. But you can still do tons of damage with this playstyle. However, it comes at the cost of not being able to mark your teammates anymore, so this is definitely not the healing talent. You cannot heal with this pretty much at all. Like, this is all you're doing. So, yeah, only pick this if you have a second support on the team, please. And speaking of second supports, let's talk about balance now. So every single support in the game has received a balance change to make them either slightly weaker or slightly stronger in some areas, got some power shifts, even got some soft reworks. Starting with Corvus, who was originally slated to get both a damage and a healing nerf. However, I'm happy to report that he is no longer receiving the healing nerf as of the actual live update. They decided to walk back on that after the PTS. So, as you can see on Fernando here, if we put the mark on him, we're still doing, well, 920 burst heal, which is very, very nice. However, his damage has been, well, I would argue stabilized, because instead of having a weird, ugly number for his DPS, he now just does a solid 1000 DPS exactly, which is a damage nerf. He is going down by about 50 damage per second. Furia is getting some raw damage buffs this patch. She is no longer receiving the healing nerf that was planned. They also walked back on that on the PTS. Instead, she's just doing 330 damage per shot with Pyreblade, up from 315, which is very nice. It's back to the pre-keyword levels. And then she also does 250 damage per orb with her Wings of Wrath, which was previously 300 on the PTS. However, they slightly went down on that, but it's still up from 200. Next, we have Grohk, who's received a power shift. His totems are now slightly weaker, although they also now match up with the description that was already in the game in some parts. They now heal for 325 per second instead of 380, so slightly weaker, but his damage has gone up. starting at 70 and ramping up to 91 on his lightning staff, just like it was supposed to be. However, this doesn't actually affect Maelstrom, and that's because Maelstrom is a flat increase. So proportionally, it is now only 5 damage higher than the regular lightning staff, as you can see here. Starts at 75, ramps up to 98. Which is still a DPS improvement, but it doesn't exactly get the major damage buff that you might have been expecting. I'm trying to keep this video as unbiased as possible, but to be honest, Grover might be dead this patch. So, they have taken the nerf hammer to him substantially. First of all, they have removed keywords, which I am very grateful for. However, instead of slightly improving parts of his kit, like is tradition with keywords being removed, they have nerfed basically every aspect of him. The only thing that has gone up is the damage. So his damage is slightly higher now. It is up to 370 from 350. So at this medium range here, you will struggle to actually see a number below 400. And if we get right up onto Victor here, you can see it's 370. That close. But even at this range, we're basically doing 400. So that's nice. And the maximum damage we can do with an axe is now 740, and then if we go to Ferocity, 962. Which, on the PTS, it was 1,000. That's right. This damage is weaker than it was on the PTS. I'm so sad. Anyways, they also have, well, they have nerfed a lot of things. Rampant Blooming has gotten a slight buff to compensate for the keywords being removed. It now heals for a burst of 350. And that's all they did to Rampant Blooming. They planned on buffing it a lot more on the PTS, however they have walked back on that substantially. The Crippling Throw has also gotten a slight damage increase from 425 to 450, nothing too crazy, although it will help. But then the Blossom. So, when keywords are removed from Rampant Blooming, it took the Blossom from 720 down to 600, and the Blossom with Ferocity and Deep Roots, I would argue, was already kind of on the weaker side at just 600, but they've taken that down to a 500 burst heal. And then they have slightly increased the healing over time from 285 to 350, however it is still a net reduction in the amount of healing you get, and also because it's a reduction to the amount of burst, that means that the practical application of the healing is significantly weakened. Because, well, in late game Cauterize, if you only have a second to heal someone up, having a burst heal is very, very important. So this is a major nerf to the Blossom, and he's just going to be even more dependent on Rampant Blooming now to heal than ever before. And also, he is much more dependent on a build that runs pickup at a high level, because with Rampant Blooming now, well, Rampant Blooming has gone up, Blossom has gone down, you do the math. So, yeah. Oof, man. And then, just to throw some extra salt in the wound, Whirlwind has also been nerfed. Just a slight nerf, however. It has increased the cost on activation from 40% to 50%. So if you want to cancel the ult early because you no longer need the healing, you will simply have less ultimate charge than you did previously. Before I get too sad as a Grover enjoyer, let's talk about Io, who is getting a bunch of damage increases and also a slight healing decrease. So let's start with the healing nerf. She now heals for 135 per tick on her Moonlight, which is the same as it was previously with the old iteration of Lifelink. Remember the Lifelink talent that gave you the heal on Luna, but decreased your Moonlight healing? Yeah, it's now that, but for all talents, which I think is pretty reasonable. And, also, to compensate, of course, they have given her a bunch of damage buffs, starting with her bow now doing 425, and Luna now having a 3-second shorter stun cooldown, as well as doing 200 damage per light attack instead of 180. And also, her ultimate does a burst of 1,000 damage up from 800, so very nice damage increases, and it's going to make her even harder to flank. Genos is getting a lot of buffs this patch, starting with Binary Star, now dealing 380 damage per shot. It was 400 on the PTS, however they decided that was just a little bit too much damage, especially when lasering with headshots. So they've nerfed it slightly, but it is still up from where it was previously, and it now means that Binary Star is finally doing considerably more damage than his base Star Splitter, making it a true damage talent. Next up, we have some reworks to his cards. So if we check out the build I'm using here, this is the previous standard Genos build with Astral Cycle and Retrograde. And, well, both of these cards have been reworked, and their regular effects have been put into base kit at a slightly reduced level. So now the base cooldown of the Astral Mark is 6 seconds, and the base duration is 12 seconds. And that's just how it's going to be across the board now. The only way you can improve the cooldown even further is to buy Chronos. So what do these cards do? Well, they're pretty powerful. Astral Cycle grants a 20% movement speed increase to the target ally for 6 seconds, which is very powerful. I don't think I need to tell you why. Retrograde is arguably slightly less impactful. It grants a 200 health shield to the target ally, so if you want to increase your healing numbers, kind of, it's not really healing, it's a shield, but if you want to increase the health you're giving to your teammates, this is the way to do it. So yeah, you can do that if you want. And it's a way to also bypass Cauterize in late game, because obviously shields don't get cauterized, but if you have a bunch of shields on the team, then Wrecker will destroy this, and it's probably not a worthwhile card. So yeah, very nice card reworks for this guy. And then on top of that, Void Grip now deals 100 burst damage on cast, so when the enemy's by Unbound, it'll be doing slightly more damage now, which is pretty cool. Now, I know Moji is the character getting the big rework this patch, but Lillith is also getting a pretty substantial rework. It's kind of a soft rework, because she's not getting a whole ability overhaul, but there is a lot of stuff here, and I'm going to do my best to cover it even though I'm not a Lillith expert. Starting with, she has a new talent. Cursed Accord has been reworked, and it's not the garbage that we saw on the PTS. Instead, this will decrease the blood cost of your abilities by 35%, making them easier to spam, but they increase the Swarm and Deathwing's cooldowns by 1 second, instead of reducing the damage you do. So it's still a trade-off talent. It'll make your abilities easier to use, but also it comes at a pretty substantial cost. So yeah, we'll try this out here, and we'll also take a look at her new cards, of which there are many. So, let's just read them out here in order. Blood Cannon has been reworked to simply increase your blood health by 50, so you can get a maximum of 250 blood health from this card. No longer is there a penalty to your blue health, your regular health, right? But you get substantially less blood health, so a bit of a rebalancing to this card. Enriched Blood now just increases the duration of your swarm by up to 1 second. So, pretty powerful card. Obviously, increasing duration of your swarms is a very good thing. This card previously used to increase the damage and the healing, but it would decrease the duration of your swarms. So I would say it's gotten a lot better from the previous iteration of the card. Next, we have Overflowing Delights, which has also had its penalty removed. Now, it just increases the radius of the swarm, and you'll notice that the value has also gone up, from 2 to 3%. So at max level, you now increase the radius by 15%. Symbiotic Relationship has also been reworked. Again, actually. It got reworked on the PTS, and then it got reworked again. So now, it grants allies 4% movement speed while within your swarm, so up to 20% at level 5, kind of being like a weaker version of Grohk's movement speed card on Totem, but with the benefit that swarms can't be destroyed like Totems can. And for those who were worried, Wings of Terror is back. It's not getting reworked. It still increases the lateral distance of your Deathwings, so phew! Crisis averted. And of course, speaking of crises averted, a lot of the major nerfs that she was getting on the PTS have been reverted in part. So she's still getting a base HP reduction from 750 down to 500. However, her blood health is no longer getting reduced. So as you can see, we still have 3200 HP. And am I using Blood Cannon? I am using Blood Cannon. So without Blood Cannon, I would have 3000 health just at base, which is very nice. Also, her Blood Hex regeneration has been increased. So hexing allies will now regenerate starting at 60 and scaling by 10 to a cap of 250. So you're going to get more blood health out of your hex. And on the enemies, it will still regenerate blood at a new rate of starting at 20, scaling by 10, and capping out at 210. And its scaling has been standardized with the hex on allies as well, so both of them tick every half of a second. And whenever you hex an ally now, if they get a kill, and you get an elimination off of that, you will have a burst heal of 750, kind of like a passive inbuilt version of Kill to Heal. Previously, the way this worked is if you put the hex on an enemy, and you killed them, you would get a burst heal, and if someone else killed them, you would get a slightly smaller burst heal. Now, it's basically just like Bloodbath built into your hex. Now let's get into the slight number changes. So Heart of Crimson now does slightly more... Oh, that's bad. I'm playing Curse of the Cord right now. There's still a damage nerf. There's still damage debuff. Uh-oh. Okay, quickly, go to Murderous Intent. Okay, there we go. The damage has been increased to 650, up from 625. However, basically everything else is a nerf. So the Blood Hex on allies is nerfed from 25 to 20 per tick. So as you can see, slightly lower ramping on Fernando here, but still very powerful. And just one hex alone is breaking pace here with Cassie, and the new final value is 500. The Swarm has also been nerfed. So at level 1, it does 60 healing per tick. At level 2, it will do 90 healing per tick. And at level 3, it will do, you guessed it, 150 healing per tick. What? Okay. So yeah, all of those numbers have gone down slightly, and so have the damage numbers on enemies when you use your Swarm. So, if we put a level 1 Swarm, that's going to do 50 per tick. And I'm going to hex Fernando here just to get that self-sustain going for my Swarms. But then level 2, we do 70 damage per tick. And then level 3, oh wow, I killed them. At level 3, we will deal 110 damage per tick, so all slightly lower. And finally, we have some blood cost improvements. So the tier 1 Swarm now only costs 350 health to cast, which is pretty cool. And it scales all the way up to 650 at max charge. So that is all a lot cheaper now. And then on top of that, her Blood Wings, or Death Wings, now only costs 280 health, down from 350. So those are the final changes to this character. Yeah, quite a lot going on, and luckily she's not nearly as dead as she was on the PTS. I'm glad they actually listened to feedback and changed a lot of things to make her better. Let's pick things up and keep things rolling. So, Moldamba has gotten a healing buff and sort of shift. The cooldown on Mending Spirits is now 2.5 seconds, so you have, well, just more healing throughout the match. And they've also changed the healing rate so that it is slightly slower again. Now it takes 3 seconds for the full amount of healing to be delivered, rather than just 2. On top of that, he now does 425 damage per shot, same as Io, which is also a very nice buff. As you can see, Pip's keywords have also been removed. However, unlike Grover, he hasn't been gutted. Catalyst actually is the only talent here that's getting an improvement this patch. It now does 40% bonus damage instead of 35%, and that's to compensate for his damage going down substantially, thanks to the keyword being removed. So we throw this out, and we're doing 840 damage per shot. Rei has a new and very scary talent. This is Ambidextrous, replacing the talent extension. Chain Heal has 2 charges, but its cooldown is increased by 2 seconds. This talent was OP on the PTS, and so they gave it that 2-second penalty, and they removed the feature where it slowed the Chain Heal, so now the Chain Heal is still moving at the exact same rate. And they've also, at base kit, nerfed the healing down to 550 per bounce, but as you can see, we have 2 charges, and thanks to the cooldown penalty, it is slightly harder to spam, and now we have a 5-second cooldown there, so yeah, this cooldown penalty does mean a lot, and you will now once again need Chronos and the proper cooldown cards to maintain your bounces here. And whether this actually turns out to be a net positive or negative for her healing, I guess remains to be seen. I'll leave that to the Rei mains in the comments below to test out. Seris has received some slight damage buffs, starting with her Ren Soul. Now applies 100 damage per stack up to 400 damage at max, as you saw on the Ying there. And on top of that, Convergence, which is her ultimate, now has a massive damage increase. It previously did 10 damage, which was unlisted on the ultimate, but now it does 200 damage, which just primes them with a little bit of extra damage, and then with the buffed Ren Soul, this combo is now very strong, especially with Soul Collector. Finally, Agony has gotten a description change just to make it more accurate. Agony itself hasn't changed. It remains exactly the same in function, however, this is just a bit more clear. For each stack of Soul Orb detonated by Ren Soul, Restore Soul heals an additional 5% true healing up to 25% for 10 seconds. Basically, if you detonate 5 stacks, you will heal for 25% more on every single right click, and it works like Rejuvenate, meaning it cuts back against Cauterize, so it's exactly like Rejuvenate. So as you can see, I can heal Fernando for 206, and I can heal him for 206 again. and it just is continuous for 10 seconds. So that's the way Agony always worked, it's just a description update. Finally, Ying has gotten a slight nerf. She now heals for 700 on Life Exchange. Very, very small nerf, and honestly, it makes sense. They have walked back on both the damage buff and the healing nerf on her illusions that she was slated to receive on the PTS, so a lot less drastic than we were originally anticipating. So that's it for the support changes. Now let's talk about the remaining few champions who have balance changes. Starting with Saati, who has received a soft rework. She has a brand new talent, as well as an overhaul to her pip system, so let's talk about that. First of all, her new talent is called Spare Change. This causes Ricochet to now only cost 2 pips. Wait, but doesn't it already cost 2 pips? Well, we'll get to that in a second. Ricochet costs 2 pips and generates 1 pip for every 4 successful hits against opponents. So you still have the coin spam playstyle where you sit in the back and you shoot coins all day, but this will now grant you a lot more pip regeneration, and potentially allows you to play, I guess, a bit more of an active playstyle with the coin playstyle, which is good, but I still have my gripes with the coin, as you guys know. But also, she now has a new rework to her pip system. So whenever you shoot enemies now, for every 3 successful hits you do, you will now gain pips. So as you can see, by shooting these guys, I'm regenerating pips very quickly. However, that window of opportunity also costs 5 pips instead of 4, so you can no longer double blast back, but if you hit your shots, then you will still be able to blast back very frequently, so it rewards you for actually being skillful with this character. The decoy remains at 4 pips, and now the coin, by default, costs 3 pips, so each ability of hers now has a distinct pip cost. And if I just use my ability here and don't shoot, you'll see the default pip regeneration rate, which is very slow. And that's because they slowed it from 2.65 seconds to 3 seconds. So if you're being passive with Saati, if you're not hitting those shots, then you will not have nearly as many pips and not nearly as many abilities. So this rework to the pip system ultimately makes her more skillful, and I think that's a great thing. Last but not least, her hand cannon is slightly better now. It has slightly improved range, and also the fire rate increase that was previously a part of her pip system, where if you were above 4 pips you would shoot faster, but if you're below 4 pips you wouldn't. That has just been put into base kit now, so regardless of how many pips you have, you will still be firing just this fast, right? Every half a second, bam, 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 just shoot out those shots. So that is very nice. I know I said we were done with support balance, but that's kind of a lie. Skye has received a healing nerf on Smoke and Dagger. It's gone back down to 100, which is reasonable, and it never needed a buff in the first place in terms of the actual healing it provided. So now with Healing Vapors level 5, you're back to doing 82 to 83 per tick. And finally, we have the champion who has been improved the most this patch, one could say, and that is Omen. Omen has received many, many fixes, and he is now a playable character. He no longer has the consistency issues that he once had. So, yeah, first of all, let's just check out the shotgun. The shotgun has been reworked to work more like other shotguns in this game, where if you hit more than 50% of the pellets, you deal full damage, 100%. However, if you only hit 50% or less of the pellets, you will deal 50% reduced damage. So at this range, we are consistently doing 225 every time, with an occasional 450 depending on its random spread. And if we get closer, look at that. Look at how consistent it is. Now, obviously, it's still going to be very short-ranged with the base shotgun here, but that is so much better than it was previously, where sometimes you deal full damage, sometimes you deal 125, sometimes you deal double digits, and then you'd go back up to like 200, and it was just all over the place. This is much, much better. However, they have nerfed his damage slightly to compensate, and now, as you can see, only deals 450 instead of 500, but he still does very good DPS up close, and obviously you can wind down into this mode and also be very accurate and very powerful. And they've also brought back Umbral Lance as basically almost kind of like its old version. So, Aphotic Reaver is no longer ramps down. That description is still grammatically incorrect, but its spread is now reduced by 70%, up from 50%, and it no longer has the fire rate penalty. So it now fires at the exact same speed as the winded down, accurate version of his shotgun. And this basically works like regular Umbral Lance like we had on release. So if I grab a build that doesn't have more, you can see that, yeah, we're just doing 450. And because it has spread, it will still be a little bit inaccurate at these longer ranges where sometimes, yeah, you'll still get like bouts of 200 there. But yeah, it's almost back to its former glory, and it's certainly a lot better than it was previously, because you no longer have the fire rate penalty. You're now no longer nerfing your DPS, which is really, really good, and this just makes him a lot more consistent at those longer ranges. So, yeah, Omen is back, baby. I mean, this is just playable. It works. It just works. And that is absolutely fantastic. But we're not done yet. There is one more change to discuss, and that is to Gravity Vice. They have added a cripple to Gravity Vice, a very, very small cripple at the start of it, just like Genos' Void Grip. And that is to ensure that, hopefully, he will no longer just be disabled if he ends up trying to use his Gravity Vice on someone who happens to use an Ethereal ability or Zen counter or anything like that that was capable of locking this character out of his abilities previously. So, yeah, you see that very small cripple that's applied, that arrow that was above Ying's head? That is the cripple. And hopefully, because it now just applies that raw cripple status, instead of doing whatever it did previously to disable movement abilities, it will no longer break this character. That's the hope. If he is still breaking this patch, if you have a situation where he still has his abilities disabled, then make sure to report it in the bug section of their Discord server, or make a support ticket, or something. Let me know in the comments. But he should be fixed now. That's the hope. So, massive W's for Omen. The newest character in Paladins is once again feeling brand spanking new, and he is feeling excellent once again. Last but not least, before we get to the bug fixes, let's go over the very nice item balance. Starting with armor plating. Armor plating has been nerfed. It now costs 300 credits per tier, and that makes it the most expensive item in the item store, tied with Chronos and Bloodbath. Sentinel has also been made cheaper. It is now exactly as cheap as Unbound, and that makes it a much more savory choice when you need to counter those slows, knockups, and knockbacks. Finally, lethality has been very much improved because it now lasts for 5 seconds, just like Sentinel's shield and just like Trigger Sense bonus. So you will now have much more consistent uptime on that movement speed bonus, and it doesn't feel like it's lacking anymore compared to Sentinel and Trigger Sense. Finally, we have just a few bug fixes, one of which is actually very, very nice for the average player, one of which is very nice for me, and one of which I didn't even know was a problem. So, first of all, the ammo challenges in the Trials of the Realm. Oh, they're daunting. They're terrible. They're some of the worst game design I've seen in a while, quite frankly. They have all been massively decreased in terms of the amount of ammo you need to complete them. So, the big whopper, the 500,000 ammo quest, that honestly you're insane if you completed, and also was bugged when you did complete it, where it would just reset back down to 0% progress. That has been reduced to a mere 100,000 ammo. This is why I was telling people, don't even bother with the 500,000 ammo quest, because it's stupid, and yeah, they're probably just going to auto-complete it for people or find a way to fix it, and this is the way they're going about it. So they have drastically reduced the amount of ammo you need for it. And then every other one is being reduced even further, by a lot. So the 100,000 ammo quest has gone down to just 20,000 ammo, and the 15,000 ammo has gone down to 5,000 ammo. Now, there's still very bad quests, because expending ammo doesn't require skill, and it also super negatively impacts characters who don't have a lot of ammo consumption, like Bomb King. So, yeah, they're bad quests still, but at least they're slightly easier to complete now. In fact, not just slightly, they're massively easier to complete now. You won't be grinding ROM for 40 hours, let's just put it that way. Next up, we have a very nice bug fix for Bomb King. Previously, for some reason, he was able to spam right-click and detonate whenever he wanted, even if there was no bomb on the field. You could just constantly do the animation. And it was actually a bit of a problem, because if you wanted to do sticky boosting, it was a lot harder, because normally you can do it like I just did there, where you just hold down these two buttons and you detonate right on yourself every single time. But because of that bug, it was making it so you couldn't really do that smoothly. And also, it just didn't make a lot of sense. So now that's been fixed. You can no longer detonate unless a bomb has been thrown, and that is really nice. Very good bug fix. Finally, They have fixed an issue where the magic mark UI on Moji could flicker when applied and detonate rapidly. I don't even know what this is, but I'm glad it's fixed. Yay! So that's going to do it for the Feudal Fables update recap. Let me know what you think about this update and all the PTS changes especially in the comment section down below. And of course drop a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, and once again remember that if you want to buy the new event pass or any of the new skins, or you just want crystals to buy anything in general, then make sure to do it over at my Nexus. Nexus.gg/AndrewChicken. You can buy crystals, the season pass, DLC, and more, and support the channel directly in the process. It's a great way to support me, keep me doing what I'm doing, and it's also officially affiliated with Evil Mojo, so it's just an all-around fantastic way to support the channel. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.